Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name's Claire and my channel is mostly focused around goal setting, planning, and I've recently added in some book and reading content. So I did do a what I read in October video. So I did go through probably about 15 to 20 books there, which I'll link in this video if you're interested in watching that one as well. Just to preface this, I do generally do mostly audiobooks. So I personally find in terms of reading that I enjoy kind of sitting and listening to an audiobook in the evening more than sitting down and kind of reading like a physical book. And that's mostly because right now I'm doing full-time school, and so I'm reading a lot and digesting a lot of information through reading, kind of like physical words or digital words on a screen kind of most of the day. So in the evening, I do really enjoy still having kind of the experience of a book, but more through an audiobook rather than a physical book. So I'm just going to pull up my list here on Goodreads. And I am on Goodreads under Claire Southwell, if you're interested. So generally the way that I do my ratings on Goodreads is I just go through and I do the stars that I rated the book personally just for enjoyment. So I'm not rating on like the plot or the writing style or anything like that. It's just strictly, did I enjoy the book? Yes. How much? And then I do 1 to 5 stars, kind of depending. And I would also say I'm not like a super hard rater. So if I do like really enjoy a book, I'll give it a 4. 5 would be that I loved it. But I do have quite a few kind of 4 and 5 star books because it is really just, do I enjoy it or not? Not is it the best book ever written in the world? So what I'll do is I'll add a screenshot for each of the titles similar to what I did on the last video. And the first book that I'm going to go through here is The Pink Glass House, and that is by Asha Elias. And this is a book, I did really enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. And it's essentially this family moves from like a small Midwestern kind of town to Florida. And there really is this culture shock that they're experiencing moving to like this really wealthy area. A lot of wealthy families, and really just navigating. It's mainly like the mom and the wife whose story you're following, like as she's navigating, trying to make friends and trying to kind of revamp her career. She had a great career that she left, and how does she just really set up her life and navigating kind of this whole new culture of people where it's like there's the wealth and the gossip and all of that happening. And it just follows her journey. And then there is a bit of a scandal in the book, and it's figuring out kind of who's guilty and what happens. And so it kind of goes into that a little bit as well. Overall, I really did enjoy this book. 4 stars is what I rated it. I would say it's probably like a 3.5, but you can't do half stars on Goodreads. But I thought it was a great book. Definitely enjoyed reading it. And then I read a couple Colleen Hoover books this month. And all of these this month, I think, are audiobooks. And I'll let you know if there is anything that I actually kind of read on my Kindle or as a book. So the first Colleen Hoover book is Ugly Love. And that one, essentially, there's a girl, probably early 20s, young woman. She moves in with her brother. And then there's a bit of a kind of romantic pull towards her brother's friend who lives right across the hall from them. And it's just really like that dynamic where they're interested and they kind of start something casual. And then, of course, as always happens in romance novels, it's really, they're both feeling like they want potentially more. And there's that whole mental struggle and also them feeling out like that dynamic. And then there's also some trauma in the backstory of the male main character in the book, in terms of why he's finding it difficult to allow this new love in. This one I did give 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It had a few quite emotional kind of scenes within the book, but overall I thought it was well written. I do typically enjoy Colleen Hoover. I haven't read like a whole ton of her books, but the ones I have read, I do enjoy. So I know not everybody loves her, but I think in terms of just enjoyment factor in a book, I do quite enjoy it. The other Colleen Hoover book that I read was Maybe Someday. Okay, so in this book here, essentially there's this girl and she's living with her best friend, and she finds out that her boyfriend and her best friend are essentially, he's cheating on her with her best friend. It was her best friend that introduced the two of them, and they had been having kind of a physical relationship throughout the whole time that they knew each other. And then there's this male who she's able to see from her balcony and hear him when he's outside on his balcony kind of playing music. And there's just like this connection there. And essentially right at the beginning, he gives her a place to stay with him and all of his roommates. And then it's just, again, navigating that relationship. He also has a longtime girlfriend. And so there is like a pull between them, but he is fairly loyal to his girlfriend. So it's just kind of navigating the push and the pull, and it's kind of like where he's battling having feelings for two different women and going through that dynamic. I don't want to give too much away in terms of like what actually happens throughout the book, but that's kind of the gist of the book overall. And then in terms of books that I read, multiple books from another author, I read a couple from Emily Henry. So the first one that I read was Happy Place. And this one I gave 5 stars. And both of the Colleen Hoover I gave 5 stars. I don't know if I said for both of them kind of what happened. So this one is essentially, there's a woman and she goes to kind of like this beach house type place to meet all of her friends that they like grew up from college together. And she had broken up with her longtime boyfriend who was also part of the same group. But they hadn't told anyone that they broke up. And then when she arrives, her ex is actually there. And then she actually also finds out that this is going to be the last time that they can go to this kind of like their happy place that they all go to as a group every year, because the girl who owns it, her family is selling the property. So it's their last hurrah together. And then it's just that dynamic where nobody knows that they're broken up. So like they're sharing a room, and kind of navigating their emotions of dealing with the breakup without having told anybody. And obviously like all of the emotions that go with that. But I really enjoyed that one as well. And then the other one that I read by Emily Henry is People We Meet on Vacation. I know this one's really hyped up. I did enjoy it, but I would say I rated it a 3-star. I would say like it's kind of close to 3.5, but I would say more on the 3-star side than the 4-star side for me. This is a woman who she had a friend in college, her best friend, and they would go on vacations every year together. And eventually they kind of allude to something having happened on one of the vacations, and they don't really tell you what it was. And it's just kind of her navigating having everything that she wanted in terms of her career and her life, or what she thought she wanted, and still not really being content. And she ultimately reaches back out to this old friend and tries to reconnect. And a lot of the story is they wind up kind of going together to his brother's wedding as friends. And the trip's a bit of a disaster. So it kind of just walks through the trip that they're on that does not go smoothly at all. And then a lot of flashbacks to like prior trips, so you can understand what their dynamic was and what they experienced with their prior trips that they did. So they talked about doing a trip to BC, which is interesting because I'm in BC. So they talked about going to like Vancouver Island and around Vancouver and all of that. So a lot of the landmarks I knew, which was kind of cool. But I did really enjoy the book. It just wasn't my favorite. So I would still read other books, like the other book from Emily Henry I enjoyed, and I think maybe because I had read one that I enjoyed a lot more, and then I went into this one that was kind of like a miscommunication trope, which isn't always my favorite depending on how it's done. It just kind of fell a little bit short for me. The next one I have here, it's called The Best Way to Bury Your Husband, and it's by Alexia Casal. And I rated this one 4 stars. This was a cute little, it's kind of like a comedy thriller, a comedy mystery, I guess it would be called. And it's essentially takes place during lockdown. And the reason that the author wrote the book was to touch on the rise in domestic violence throughout lockdown and all of these women who were then stuck in these confined spaces with their partners. And ultimately, you know, in reality, wasn't really a great experience for a lot of people during lockdown. But this book kind of centers on these different women who kind of hit their last straw with their husband's abuse and wound up unaliving their husbands separately. And then essentially they all stumble across each other, and they've all done it within the same week. So just not realistic at all, but it's kind of like lightly written, like it's in like a light humorous format that it's written. But essentially they all stumble across each other, and they're trying to figure out what to do to be able to still be present for their children, cover up what they've done. And then they come up with this big plan, and then it follows them on a little adventure while they're figuring it out. They have a plan kind of for creating an alibi of what happened, creating a scenario where their husbands knew each other, and it's just like a cute little story kind of walking through that, but a really poignant kind of topic. But I thought it was well done considering like the heaviness of what the author was writing about and her inspiration for the story. So I thought it was kind of clever. The next one that I read, and all of my books I found, I generally just search on my Libby app, audiobooks available now, and then I just kind of click a random one that looks good. I judge a book by a cover, so that's generally how most of these were found. So the next one I read was called The Unmothers, and it's by Leslie J. Anderson. There was, while I was reading this, quite a few kind of waits for the book came in. So I don't know if it's a popular book right now. And it sounded familiar. I don't know if there's like a series or anything built around it, or if it's just maybe the name sounds familiar, but it's not actually anything familiar. I gave this one 4 stars, and this is a really interesting book, and it basically starts with this reporter goes to this small town because there is a story that a horse gave birth to a live human baby. And essentially she goes to this strange little town, and they're not really sure what's happening. And all of the horses that she sees have like these what appears to be human eyes and human souls. And there's like this weird fog thing that comes over the town that everyone avoids, and just like eerie kind of vibes. So it's a little bit spooky. And so she's in this small town. She's away from everything. She's overcoming some personal trauma. And that's why they sent her on like this non-story, but it turns out to be a bit of a story that happens, and it's, without giving too much away, like it's kind of I want to say like almost like a psychological thriller. I'm curious what they've actually classified it as for genre. Let me just pull that up. So in terms of genre, it's got horror, thriller, mystery, fantasy. So it was a really interesting story. I'd say totally outside of anything I would normally read. But like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a little bit strange, a little bit kind of odd as it walked through the story. Wouldn't be something if I knew what it was about that I would have picked up. But I enjoyed the way that it was written and how it progressed through the story. So I guess that's what I'll say about that one. The next one here that I read was called Society of Lies. And again, this one, as I was reading it, had a lot of people kind of adding a wait list for it. And this one's by Lauren Ling Brown. I gave it 3 stars, and I would say again, probably like a 3.5. I would say probably like a 3.5 star. And this one is essentially based, I think it was Princeton was the university, and there's like the secret society. And one sister was in it, and there was some kind of bad stuff that happened. So there was an incident that happened. I'm not sure how much is kind of in the description of the book, so I don't want to give too much away. So there's basically an incident that happened. She tried to protect her sister and convince her sister not to go to the school to avoid like this danger. And then her sister, who obviously wanted to be like her and wasn't aware of the actual risks, wound up going to the same school and joining the same secret society. And then it's just kind of like all of the dangers and risks. And then there was an incident with the sister as well, kind of that happened that they then have to navigate and figure out what happened, who was guilty, and all of that. So it was definitely a good book, and I did enjoy it. I almost gave it 4 stars, so I was kind of between 3 and 4, and I did really enjoy it, but kind of something missing that stopped me from like really loving it. But it was well written, and I did enjoy it for kind of what it was. The next one that I read was called Down to a Science, and that was by Haley Cass. I gave this one 4 stars, so this is it's part of her Pride collection, and it's essentially these 2 women meet, and they become best friends. And then it's definitely a miscommunication kind of trope. So whether you like that or not, I'll leave to you. But it was a bit of a shorter story. I think if you were to listen to it regular speed, it was like a 6-hour kind of time frame. But this is book 1 of the Pride collection. So I haven't gone through and looked for like the other books in it. But yeah, I was just following their friendship and kind of the main character's struggle. It seems like she's a bit like a bit neurospicy, so kind of more reserved, not super social, feels super socially awkward, and has never really had a relationship. And so they become best friends, and it's a really sweet like friendship, and then just kind of going through dealing with as the main character realizes she has feelings, navigating that and trying to figure out kind of communicating that to her best friend. The next 2 here I have are part of a series. So my library only has the first 2. I probably would have continued listening to it. But the first book is Change on the Fly, and it's by Maren Moore. I gave them both 3 stars because like they weren't the most amazing books, but I also enjoyed them and would continue listening to the series. I hope that makes sense. The series that they're from is called Totally Pucked, and the first book here is kind of like one of those series where it's going through like all the people in the group. So like in the first book, you kind of get introduced to the two main characters that book's about, but you also get introduced to some of the other characters, and then the next book is about one of those characters. So I'm sure you're familiar with those types of kind of series, but the first one is about they're all hockey players, as I'm sure you guessed from the title, Totally Pucked. And then the first one is basically one of the stars from the hockey team. He winds up becoming a guardian of a small boy, just due to something that happened with a family member and him being the only option. And then he winds up having his sister's best friend kind of come and look after the boy who's just like a toddler while he's kind of like playing away games. And so she goes with him. And then there's a romance that develops, and that's essentially it. So it's just them navigating that, not wanting to tell his sister because his sister, like growing up, all of her friends would always ditch her for her brother. Like they would have a fling and then she'd lose her friends. So the promise that the best friend made when they were really little was never to pursue anything with her brother. So just dealing with, do they tell her, do they not tell her, do they keep it casual even though they feel like they're developing feelings and falling in love. So it's just like a cute little kind of romance story. The next one is another member of the same hockey team. And there's a blogger that is essentially kind of writing not great stuff about him. He's going through all of this turmoil in life. And then he winds up, I don't remember the reason, but he winds up kind of to get away going on a solo trip to a little like Airbnb, not Airbnb. He winds up going on a trip to like a little B&B type place out in the country. So just like a little independent place where no one will know him. And then he meets a woman there and she winds up kind of leaving and doesn't leave a way to contact her. And so it's just the dynamics of the aftermath of that and trying to navigate like where they both like each other, but they don't think that there's any future. So again, a cute little story. Gave it 3 stars. Both of these I would say like are probably 3.5 stars. But I don't know if I'd go as high as 4 stars for them, but really enjoying the series and would continue to listen to it if they were available. And then the last one that I listened to is called Just Go With It. And this is number 1 of a series called Nashville is Calling. The Libby app and my library didn't have any of the other books for the series available. So I did give this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was by Madison Wright. And this is, again, when they were in college, there was a connection between them. They kissed one night, and then he got the opportunity to go to LA to be represented by a big agent for what he was working on. And then they wound up kind of just calling it a mistake and not pursuing anything, but always having like this connection. And then he moves back to Nashville like 6 years later or something. And they're both just battling this with, again, a miscommunication kind of trope of, are they, is the other person like just a friend? Because they're both feeling like the other person thinks that they're just a friend, but both struggling with feelings. And then the other piece of this is that the female main character does have fibromyalgia, so she has that she's dealing with, and also dealing with a lot of things in life kind of falling apart for her, aging out of her parents' medical, so having to overcome that. And at the same time, her best friend is like moving out from the space that they share. She's losing her job. And just navigating all of that while he is moving back to Nashville and they're reconnecting and kind of dealing with those emotions. So I thought it was well written in terms of what it was going through. Would definitely continue the series. Really enjoyed it. It was just a kind of a cute little romance story. Nothing super heavy within it or anything like that. But overall, I enjoyed it. And that was all of my books for November. I realized after I did the October that when I pulled up my October list, there was one book that was missing. And I'm just going to pull it up now and just talk about that one quickly. So that book was Start With Why by Simon Sinek. So I don't read a ton of nonfiction because when I'm reading, I'm usually reading kind of for enjoyment rather than learning. I do enjoy nonfiction when I'm in the mood, but I have to be in like a pretty specific mood. And this one is just kind of walking through starting with why and kind of leadership. And it's just kind of talking about like, why are certain people leaders? Why do people do what they do? What is the motivation? It's pretty much everything you would expect it to be. I didn't personally feel like there was any mind-blowing revelations in this book. I feel like there's others that probably covered like pretty similar points made throughout the book. I think it was like a good book, and let me go back and see what I rated. I rated it 4 stars. So like I said, it was a good book. It was well kind of written. It was informative, but I didn't think it was revolutionary. But overall, I did enjoy it. So I did just want to touch on that one because I totally missed it. And I know it's a pretty popular kind of book that a lot of people are reading right now, at least when I look at like the business groups that I'm part of and the memberships that I'm in. I know Start With Wise like has been in book clubs and things like that. So did want to kind of like give my thoughts on it. Again, I thought it was okay, pretty good. I mean, I give it 4 stars, but exactly what you would expect it to be, I guess. There was nothing like above and beyond what I expected based on my assumptions going into the book. So I hope that makes sense. So you'll see I'm at a different angle than I was currently. I was just sitting here editing this video, and as I open Goodreads on my phone, there's a couple other books that I did actually read this month that unfortunately didn't show up on my PC, but they show up on my phone app. So this is what happened to me last month as well with that one book I missed. So the first book is Has Anyone Seen Charlotte Salter? And I believe that's by Nikki French. So this is a book where there's a birthday party being held on Christmas Eve for a father and a husband, and the mom never actually shows up to the party. So the daughter thinks it's weird. Her mom was like really, really strict on making sure that they were all going to be there. She was doing all of the preparations, and then she never showed up. And when they went to the police the next day, the police essentially said they didn't think it was anything to be concerned about. It was a small town. The standard story. And it's mainly kind of focused on the daughter, but just the impact of the mom never coming home and always wondering what happened. And then on Christmas Day, they are invited to go to a family friend's house, and the daughter is out with the son of the family friend, so one of their friends. And when they're out looking for his dad, they find his dad's body as well. So her mom's body hasn't been found, but she's missing. And then his dad's body is found kind of like in the lake by their house when he went to go do something by the lake. So it's really just a story trying to figure out what happened. And then it essentially goes to many years later, and they're back in town because they're clearing out the dad's house. And then the sons of the other family are there as well, and they start to do a podcast to figure out like what happened to their dad, what happened to the other family's mom, and trying to kind of reopen the investigation. So it's just like a really interesting story, and I thought it was really well written. I personally really enjoyed it, and I'm going to be looking for kind of other books from this author. I really liked kind of how it was framed and how the book was written. And it was also based in England, so I have a lot of family over there, and I have kind of strong roots to England. So anytime anything's based there, I have a little bit of soft spot for it. But it was definitely a great book, and I would recommend that one. And then the other book I read was called Bully. It was by Penelope Douglas. So she is the author, I believe, of Credence. So kind of fairly popular right now. And this was, as you guessed it was basically an enemies to lovers. The male main character bullies the main girl when they're in high school, and it is really just kind of following that dynamic where she feels like she's being tortured by him. They used to be best friends. Until he went like to his dad's house one summer. Then he came back and everything was just totally different. He was dark and moody and essentially no longer wanted to be friends with her, and kind of constantly made her life misery at high school. And basically they're brought together again in life. They are next door neighbors, and it just kind of follows that romance as it develops between them. And again, kind of like that push and pull, kind of typical enemies to lovers story. So if you're into that, you'd probably enjoy it. I don't think there was anything kind of amazing in terms of how it was written. Like, it definitely wasn't a 5-star book, but it was definitely an enjoyable story, and it was well written, and it was great for what it was. So if you're into like the enemies to lovers and kind of like a quick romance read, like a fairly easy read, you would probably really enjoy this one. And I hope you do enjoy kind of these videos where I'm going through the books that I'm reading, because I'm listening to quite a few audiobooks and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I'm thinking about potentially like each week doing a video while the books are a little bit fresher in my mind, rather than kind of doing it at the end of the month and then it's been potentially a month since I've read some of these books and kind of lost a little bit of the plot and having to like look up reminders of exactly what the book was about and what the plot was about. And I just think doing it weekly would probably be a little bit more interesting, a smaller number of books, and we could potentially go into them a little bit more. I mean, so like I don't want to give away any spoilers or ruin any endings or anything that you might, not be expecting in a book. So I probably won't go like too in depth, but I could probably do a little bit deeper of a review than kind of when I'm going through this video and I've got 15, 20 books I'm going through, and some of them are super far back, going back 3-4 weeks. So would love your thoughts on that. I think that's what I'm going to start to do. And then let me know if you would also like kind of like a monthly roundup where I've got the weekly videos, but then I also do a monthly roundup of like, okay, this is everything that I read, kind of short and sweet, synopsis and thoughts on each one. So thank you so much for watching. If you are still here and you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could like this video. If you're not already, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel and hit that little notification bell. And this is part of my Vlogmas series, so throughout November, I'm actually doing a video every day for Vlogmas. I'm going to do at least up till Christmas, but I'll see if I can push it through kind of to the end of December, because I'm really excited about like filming content. I'm having a lot of fun, and doing so many videos so quickly, I think is really like sparking my imagination and my creativity and my desire to like create videos. So hoping I can continue at a bit of a quicker pace following Vlogmas, but we'll kind of see how the month unfolds. If you have any requests, definitely please do let me know, and I hope you have a beautiful day ahead.